Okay, viewers, once again, I'm joined by Sim. How are you doing, Sim?
I'm good, John. How are you, man?
Not bad, not bad. Glad to speak to you
Good
again.
to
I
see you.
have lots of questions. Let's start off with, something pretty heavy. I mean, you experienced some backlash in regards to the symbol that you use in your iconography for the band. Can you tell us a bit more about what happened?
Yeah, I had some death threats from kind of Sikh sectors of the Sikh community. I don't want to kind of portray them in a bad light or anything, but I guess every kind of sector of people has kind of extremists that, if you go and watch football, you have people who go there and have a McDonald's and go home, and you have people who go there and start a fight, don't you? But you have people who are sort of fanatical about certain bands, and some people who, you like one or two songs, or whatever. But like yeah, it was a bit unnerving, but I was a bit worried. But then I don't know, I get quite scared quite easily. So,
Mate,
yeah,
death threats.
it's all kind of blown over really now. And
Yeah.
it was to do with the imagery that I used on the logo. So it was inspired by the symbol, the swords, and instead of the swords going up, the swords are going down. So it was kind of believed to be um, disrespectful, um, which was never my intention. It was never. It was inspired by. It wasn't like I took the symbol and turned it upside down. And that's what I did. It was an inspiration of. It was a piece of artwork that was inspired by that, and a kind of Black Panther Party kind of thing that we sort of talked about, I think, before.
Yeah. I mean, God, I mean, you were saying, um, I mean, when you told me about this off camera, I wasn't aware about the death threat element of it. So I wouldn't say you were being, scared easily. I mean, if anyone gets death threats, that's,
Yeah,
it's pretty messed up.
yeah.
So what were the repercussions of this situation? I mean, what's the state of play now?
I just blocked them on Instagram and Facebook, and nothing else has happened. Yeah, since I think I reported it to Facebook and Instagram, and then that was it. That was it. Um, yeah, um, and nothing else has happened. Yeah, so
Okay.
far.
Well, that's a relief that
Hopefully
that
that's got to do because of the fact we've been in a lockdown, and that when things open up, I'll be like 6 foot under or whatever, because things just opened up 2 days ago, didn't they? So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, at least that chapter seems to have, come to some kind of resolve because that's pretty hectic. But yeah, I wanted to get your opinions on a few current affairs. I mean, it's been a year since last summer's ignition of a global emphasis on white privilege. I mean, what are your thoughts, if any, a year on from that time?
um, I feel like a bit sad that the wave of dialogue that happened after the death of George Floyd has subsided, but I suppose that was inevitable, sadly inevitable. Um, has anything really changed? I don't know. It's very hard to know. Uh, I'm in a situation at the moment where I don't want to divulge too much because I can't really, but well, I'm sure I would be. My wife's Sri Lankan. I'm from India. That we would be treated if we were, do you know what I mean? That we're being treated the way we're being treated because of racial reasons. I mean, but it sounds like I'm sort of. I don't want it to sound like I'm pulling a race card, but it's quite clear to me that that's what's going on. Um, so it's still there, Um, I think there was a wave of, is optimism the right word? But a feeling like maybe things were being finally addressed um, after the murder of George Floyd. Um, but I guess yeah, like I mean, what do you think?
I
Careful to say the right thing because it's just such a sort of difficult issue, but it's so deep. It just goes so deep, you know.
yeah.
Racism just goes so deep that it's so difficult to disentangle. and resolve, it seems, because it's just you know, even the other day I was talking to somebody and they said, oh, well, but where are they from?
Well, I mean,
You know,
yeah.
it's like to me that seems like quite an off the cuff comment, doesn't it? But the feeling I get is that it's kind of, you know, it's kind of rooted in something else, you know.
Sure. You asked me what I think. I feel that in some ways, because I'm part of an anti-racist book club, I'm seeing those dialogues still continue, and I'm seeing a lot of focus on action as well. But within progressive circles, I can't really speak to elements of the right, let alone mainstream media. Essentially, you still have the UK, which is very much it's able to like put on this idea of itself in regards to empathy when it's a certain demographic that is hurt or killed. But when, you know, we were talking about the other day, when a young boy goes missing and he's of a certain color, he's not treated in the same kind of light, you know, and it happens all the time. You know, there was another kid, I've forgotten his name, but he was, I think he was from Telford, but he went missing as well. And I just think it's harder for the media to sell the idea to what they think people are ready to take on board when they're ready for it. You know, it's like it's quite crass, really. I mean, my next idea regarding how to see how things have changed will really be about how we integrate with people in our own circles when it's not parasocial, when it's not through the internet. I think that would be the real test, because I kind of want to see change happen in the smaller circles in my own community. I think that's where I can affect change the most. So I hope that really, you know, answers your question. But yeah,
and I suppose, you know, change doesn't happen overnight, does it? I mean, I know it's been a year, but in terms of, I suppose it's down to the next generation, isn't it?
yeah, very much so, very much so. I mean, is it fair to say that people are more aware of the media's bias towards cases of violence against white people over people of color? Do you think that that's true?
Um, oh, so hard to know. I still think like it's hard, isn't it? Because I don't really communicate with the right wing that much, you know. But the feeling that I get is that there is still a gross amount of denial about the kind of mistreatment and unfair treatment of people of colour, you know, whether it be in everyday society or by the police, for example. You know, I think it's good. I think it's good that a lot of there's been a lot of chat about corruption in the police. It's not good because it's not good that it's happening. That you know, but I'm just saying that, you know, these are issues that just have been going on and on and on and on. You know, and sometimes you know, people just say, oh well, you know, the metropolitan police in this country are much better than, you know, if you were living in da 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 or whatever. But that's just not the point.
That's not great, is it? I mean, if that is your high bar of what a police, you know, unit or institution should be, then obviously, you know, we're going to do well. I mean, I think ultimately that there is a certain sense of people who are either they identify as queer or people who belong to communities of color. There is a sense that we are all kind of like facing the same issue, and that what capitalism does, it really just helps you circumvent certain morals and certain ways of treating human beings. So under that umbrella, I think there's a lot of things happening regarding intersectional movement, which is good. But yeah, I hope that there are more people who are aware of the media being a storytelling machine rather than it being a revelatory kind of news juggernaut, which is only going to give you a certain, you know, factual basis. You know, it chooses the facts it wants to present. Obviously, I just think there's more people a bit more aware of that. Whether or not we could have more of those people being aware that are in power or more likely to vote for, say, Boris Johnson, then I don't know.
It's difficult though, but I still think the British public have a lot of you know, a lot to answer to in their kind of disinterest in politics and their disinterest in kind of you know, issues of race or inequality. I think there's just still a I mean, you know, obviously I don't go around talking to every single person in Britain, but there still feels like there's a sort of a. I mean, that's why the Tories are in power, isn't it? Because
Oh, for sure, definitely.
no one really like is delving into their politics. They just hear a few buzzwords here and there and a few sort of sound bites here and there, and that's what they latch onto. People aren't. It feels like there's still an apathy around politics.
Yeah,
People hear a few things and they just ride with that. You know, they don't actually ever really. I'm saying everybody. I'm generalising, but I still think, you know, how many people really sort of look at facts and statistics. So when you're talking about you know, how people of colour are treated in police custody, you know, there'll just be a general kind of, you know, a general kind of opinion that's kind of tossed around rather than a kind of examination of any kind of statistics or facts, you know.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I was having a really good conversation the other day with a good political comedian called Ben. Ben, if you're watching, you're awesome. But we kind of reached this idea that if you have a world which is in constant crisis, that if something comes along that seems to be reassuring you that it knows what it's doing, and it doesn't necessarily like add up, but it seems to be sure, then you're going to have people vote for it. Whereas progressives or the left, however you may want to frame it, they're constantly, you know, trying to figure themselves out, and in doing so, there will be a lot of infighting, and that isn't attractive to Joe Bloggs. You know,
he wants difficult with Corbyn, wasn't it? Because what did you think of Corbyn?
I think that there is no way I could talk about Corbyn within the short amount of time that we have, which sounds like I'm politically dodging the question. I think the idea of Corbyn was fantastic. I think the practice, especially in the end of Corbyn, was it was problematic because there was almost a denial as to how the media was going to frame that and just how powerful they were. Maybe I want to be optimistic about it, but I think he realized not too long into a certain part of the campaign that the best thing that he could do was to widen the idea of the conversation and widen the idea of his archetype, so that if someone else came along that had those views, but was perhaps had less of a history that could easily be like hijacked by the right, that they would do better. So I'd like to believe that he was trying to create a better prototype for those people to, like, you know, stand on those shoulders. That's the easiest way I can contract it. So I will never ask you what you think of it.
I mean, I thought he was great. I voted for him twice, but I sort of feel like, you know, he didn't do enough to clarify certain things, which I think, you know, I don't really want to start talking about what those things are at the moment, because that's a whole other thing, you know. But I don't think he was clear enough on certain issues, and that sort of, yeah, people just heard the buzzwords that they felt was a buzzword to them, like anti-Semitism, and then just didn't vote for him, you know. So, but then he didn't do enough to clarify what was going on, really, you know.
Yeah, I think there's part of me that, and I've said this on the record before, I'm sure, maybe with you, but there's part of me that recognizes the idea that he was keen to not dumb down what he was saying. He was keen to be implicit in certain things because he credited people with intelligence. But another part of me thinks that if you're working in politics, then there are some gross exaggerations that people can make of your implicit, you know, status or bias or statements, that, you know, that they're going to do that. And if you stay quiet, then that's going to hurt you. But again, I think that he was just widening the ability, or that space, that social space. He was literally putting it together for whoever steps in next.
Yeah.
And it'd be very easy for us to start going on about Keir Starmer, but we're going to avoid that right now.
I mean, yeah.
If you've got half an hour, then yeah, we could go into it, but I don't know if we should.
I mean, yeah, Corbyn was the most exciting kind of political leader that's been around in my lifetime, anyway. That's all I could do to sum it up.
Yeah,
I think an open goal was missed.
There is that. Yeah. God, I'm tempted to talk about Starmer and how he thinks Black Lives Matter was a moment, but we're not going to do that. No, I want to ask you two more, like, say, cultural, current affairs type questions. Nuha Rubio actually put a really good post up talking about the anxiety of reuniting with people that they hadn't seen in some time at gigs. And I wanted to know if you had a similar, say, thought process, and that the people you have, haven't seen for over a year will be right next to you at some point, talking to you at some kind of event. How is that easy to, how do you process that?
Oh yeah, I saw her post. I thought it was great, as in not great how she was feeling, obviously, but it was really, I appreciated her talking about it. And I think, I suppose that's what inspired me in the other interview to say that, like, as musicians, like, we quite often say, oh, it's a struggle, it's really hard, isn't it? But we never really go into the specifics of what's actually really difficult. And I mean, playing shows has always been kind of, filled me with complete anxiety. I must have played about 500 gigs in my life, but the idea of it always just absolutely terrifies me, and so much of being a musician is about when you're in the rhythm of like, you're just going with it and you're making music and you're playing gigs and you're making music and you're out and you're just in it, and you don't have time to stop and think and contemplate what is going on. You're just, you're just going. And I suppose it must be the same for other people doing whatever they do, whatever their work is or their profession is, And so when you have time to stop and think and contemplate, and the wind is kind of taken out of your sails, it's like, yeah, I mean, the idea of, I was saying this a while back, even just aside from playing a gig, the idea of socializing and stuff like that just seems quite scary, because I've kind of been reprogrammed, haven't I? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just mean I've been reprogrammed to be at home and be with my wife.
Yeah.
Not really see anybody else. And so I was always wondering if, when things opened up, whether there would be this kind of mass rush of everybody going out, or whether everybody would feel, not scared about catching the virus necessarily, but scared about social interaction and just, feel like, their sort of behavioural patterns have been kind of tampered with.
Sure. I think many people can identify the whole programming thing, because it's that, again, that idea, the stories that we tell ourselves, right? We wake up and we think about all the things that we're going to do today, the things that we don't want to do, the things that we have to do. And for over a year, a lot of that has been very much limited to what we're going to do in the space that we control. And so the idea of going into potentially a chaotic space of the gig is actually, it must be even more so for musicians, quite a daunting idea. For audiences, it will be about people that you haven't seen for a long time, familiar faces. Some of them you don't even know their name, but they do interact with you at gigs because they see you out and about at them. So there's a lot of catching up to do. I mean, God, it's been coined before, and it's been framed as a crass idea, but not to go full geek here, but the only thing I can really think of that it's like is like coming back after the blip out of the MCU universe. It's like, what's gone on since I've been in this particular place? You know what I mean? So,
but it's the rigidity around it as well. The kind of, the fact that it's not just like we're all just going back to how it was, is it? It's like, it's different, isn't it? You have to fulfill certain criteria to go. It's not the same capacity. Like, it's distanced. It's like everybody's a bit edgy and feeling a bit weird. It's all these things, that sort of exacerbate the situation. Really, not just the fact that you've just been taken out of the game for ages, and you're like, oh right, shit, what do I do?
Yeah.
It must be really hard if you're a band and you've been playing together and you were just getting going, and maybe you had done a couple of years of playing shows together, and you would just, because it takes a couple of years, doesn't it, as a band, if you're a band, to go out, play gigs, really know your place on the stage and how it all works, and then suddenly you haven't done anything for 18 months.
It's like this whole organism has to figure out its place in the ecosystem again. I've been bad. I promised us a mini interview, but as we both knew, we were going to start talking about the heavy shit. what it is that you've created. You've made a record. Let people know what it is. Where is it?
Yeah, so it's the EP Infant Joy on Midnight Streets, and it's up on Bandcamp on the 23rd of April, and it will be up on sort of Spotify and other streaming platforms at the beginning of May.
Awesome. And you've done a record with LeJunk, which is out now.
Yeah,
So
Last of the Run, it's up already. Yeah, more to come with him as well.
Brilliant. I'm glad to hear
Got a
that.
song called Acid Eagles.
Acid Eagles.
Yeah.
Wow. Is this some kind of weird revisitation of like stuff you've done before that had the word eagle?
Sort of horror and fantasy mashed up with politics, that the kind of next record is going to be all about. Okay,
I am so thrilled. I don't even know how to press stop, but I have to, otherwise we'll be here forever and we both got shit to do. Thank you so much, Sim.
Thanks,
have a wonderful day.
Take care, man.